Ba-da.
Okay, brother.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Real Siblings. It ain't easy. We hope you find this unconventional real estate and lifestyle podcast both entertaining and informative. We're glad you found us and we are thrilled to have you. We hope that you like what you hear and decide to join our growing community. I'm Eric, she's Donna, and we are the Real Siblings. This podcast blends real estate together with lifestyle as we work to communicate, educate, connect, and entertain our listeners. The topics always vary, conversations go in a lot of different directions, but we endeavor to provide our listeners with insights into our industry, better equipping them for their next real estate transaction. And before I
Mom.
throw, now we're going to get into, I think we decided in preparation for this, we're going to call this one Buyer Be Ready, because we have both had incidences recently. And trust me, I had one thing planned in the production schedule. Donna suggested something entirely different. And following our pre show recording discussion, we ended up here because this is real. This is why, honestly, this is the reason we have the title for this show. It ain't easy. There's so many people who think I can just do this. I own my house, I can sell it. The reality of trying to list and sell your own house, the logistics of just being there to open the door and letting complete strangers into your house is one thing. And if you're on the buying side, you go, hey, I got money. Well, that's where we're at today, right, sis?
Yeah, that was pretty good. It's kind of funny. So Eric had a topic, I had a topic, then we talked on the phone, and now we have a topic. and and you're right. It's about buyers. And so you and I were as we were discussing, we went back to what happened with what'd you say? It was episode 63 where I interviewed my
63, where you had Adam and Grant on, or
yeah,
Adam and
yeah,
Caleb on.
yeah. So at that, if you haven't listened to that, I talked to two of my sons while Eric was not able to talk for a while. And Caleb had just, and his wife had just purchased a home and had been through so much trial and frustration because they needed the money from their first house to buy the second one. And so even
Which
though,
is not uncommon. We all
oh,
end up with a lot of buyers. It's like we count on the proceeds to
right,
be available for the purchase of the next house.
correct,
But we
correct,
also need some place to live, and not everybody has an interim
right,
abode set up.
right. Where can I go for 2 weeks or 2 months if I don't have what I want? So, so they had gone through a thing and they were fine. I'm doing air quotes here if you're watching, because they had their money piece figured out, but their buyer didn't. So they were supposed to close on December 20th and it became January 2nd or 3rd till they closed. So extremely, a lot of anxiety, a lot of frustration, a lot of wondering if you're going to move or not. And that's a long story I'm not going to retell, but now you and I have both experienced this again with buyers and the whole be ready piece, because we all want it to go smoothly, don't we? We all want it to be there. But you and I talked,
That's what I say.
besides the,
Bunnies and unicorns, roses and flowers. It's like that's what we want. And at the end, we're gonna pop the champagne,
it's going to be
toast
great.
the closing, celebrate the enormous windfall of money that you made if you're the seller, or the fact that you are now the proud homeowner of a brand new house if you're working with the buyer.
Right, right. So, and, and that's when we get paid in theory, right? That's what so people are like, you show pretty houses and make good money.
Yeah,
Okay.
this industry is being under attack, and that's a different
Yeah,
episode.
yeah, yeah. So before I talk about what just has happened with me, why don't you talk about you've had something with a buyer scenario recently, correct?
Yeah. So for me, it was a client that I actually, again, this is not a short term industry.
Right.
A transaction and who you're working with does not necessarily, hey, I'm ready to go. I'm submitting the contract, and 30 days later, it's closed. In this case, in particular, on December 4th of 2023, I met with this client for the first time. We closed on the final house on December 3rd, 2024. 365 days later. 366 would have been 1 full year since the first time we had met face to face. When we closed on that transaction, it was December 3rd, which was supposed to be November 20th. And this is yet another case. Now, in this case, it was not her specifically, it was non-response from the lender. And the lender was not responding to me, was not responding to her. We were getting, because when you go into this and you have a lender, we like to think, and we build relationships with a lender, and specifically someone we refer to as the loan officer, or you might hear LO. That's generally who you and I interact with, right?
Often locally, someone that we know locally.
Yes.
Okay.
That we can have conversations with regularly, frequently. Previous episode, one of my loan officers I work with frequently, Mike Litwin, had been on as a guest with us on one of our Markets on the 8th episode. I'd have to go back and check what that is. But in this case, this was a large national financial institution. And the layers of bank bureaucracy that was in place that made it extremely difficult to ask a question and get an answer. Because, as you know, with some of these larger entities, you don't even get the same person every single time you dial the phone number. There are several of these large national lenders that if you dial the number, you're getting whoever picks up the phone. And oh, by the way, maybe it'll go back to, if you get an extension, maybe it won't. And once the loan has gotten to a certain point, the first person you talk to isn't supposed to be who you talk to next anyhow.
Right.
Because it's further down the line. So talking and communicating with the lender who has that type of process, to where you may talk to 3, 4, 5 people in the course of initiating a loan to closing the loan, makes it very, very difficult to create any kind of continuity in the transaction from our standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other challenge we have when you do that is if the lender is not familiar with the nuances of every state, and I don't care whether they're a national lender or not, the differences of closing in Tucson, Arizona,
yep,
and closing in San Antonio, Texas, is very different than closing in Columbus, Ohio.
And you are not an attorney state, correct?
We are not an attorney
Whereas
state.
Ohio is.
And whereas Ohio is.
Yep.
So in this case, because we couldn't communicate with the lender, because we had a contract that said we're closing on this date and we could no longer meet that date, my buyer client, in order to continue with the transaction, needed to offer additional money to convince the seller to extend the contract.
Oh, wow.
So not only were we not getting the information from the lender in order to get the documents we need and the verification to close, it cost her $2,600 additional in order to entice and convince the seller to continue to move ahead with the transaction, because we were out 2 weeks, just like Caleb was.
So wait, okay, so how much did I'm sorry, my brain was.
So we had the original contract price.
Yeah.
And in order to say, look, we're just not going to terminate and outright lose, because at this point we didn't meet the terms of the contract.
Right.
My buyer would have been in breach. She would have lost her earnest money. She would have lost the money she paid for the inspection. Right. She would have lost the money she paid for all of those things.
Yeah.
So rather than lose the money, we had to offer more money in order to not lose. Yeah. So that enticement was basically equal to the earnest money in order to convince them to hold on to the contract and go 2 more weeks. So the delay in the financing cost my buyer, who was already strapped. I mean, you're already at your limit. As much as we work, we talk to our clients. This is what it's going to cost to make this happen. Now, suddenly, 2 weeks before closing, oh, by the way, you've got to borrow an additional $2,600. Let's start this again with a lender that's not communicating.
Yeah.
Now, we got it done.
Right.
we
But
got a house. She sent me pictures. I mean, we closed and we took smiling pictures in front of the Christmas tree at the title office. And then she and her fiance took pictures in front of the Christmas tree in the new house for me for the holidays. But
but stress,
man, rough
stress.
road. It ain't easy.
No,
And what have
no.
you got going on?
Well, and so I have one that was is today Tuesday or Wednesday? Wednesday. Today.
Wednesday.
I have one that's supposed to close today and it's not going to. And this particular buyer is out of town and they are buying a second home. They are older than me but they keep their money. First of all, self-employed almost his whole career, 40 years, 50 years. I don't know. So always 1099 and things like that, but also always looking for the best interest rate for investments. So two banks online, one in his name, one in his wife's, and then a grand total of anywhere from 7 to 9 locations of money that needed to be brought together to buy, to close this. So many things here. First of all, I'm just going to be honest, a little bit of procrastinating on the buyer's part and probably trying to get as much interest as possible up till the very last minute, you know. People, the underwriters, so you just talked loan officer, that's our person we talk to.
Right.
Then it goes to an underwriter, sometimes down the hall, sometimes across the country, right? And they don't know anything. They don't even know about Tucson houses because they're in Michigan, whatever that is. But at the end of the day, because he was bringing money from so many places into one bank, one national bank, to send his $95,000 or whatever it is, they want to know where he got all the money from. And he just finds that ridiculous because why would a man in his 70s be lying about this? Well, because there's a lot of fraud, right? And I made the point that when I gave Caleb and Jessica just a small amount, $5,000 towards their home, it was in a shared account with Caleb. He's already on my account, but I still had to do a gift letter for the lender so that they knew that was my money going to him, because otherwise he had to prove why there was $5,000.
Why suddenly did you have this
$5,000
additional cash? The
So
transaction that I was just talking about, one of the things that challenge was even more of a challenge is part of the money was coming from Peru.
Oh, that's
And
right. Remember you
the
telling me.
reason for that is because my buyer's mother, who was contributing, is originally from Peru and they still have property in Peru and they
Right.
have rental income from Peru.
Right.
So in order for the bank, not only was it the gift letter, but they needed to verify the tenancy and the
Interesting.
source of the money in Peru, because now you're looking at somebody who's working an hourly job, getting thousands of dollars from an international bank source. And they're going, wait.
These people, who are these people? So in all of this, it goes to the underwriters who ask for something. And then I talked to my contact this morning and I talked to the buyer this morning. And we haven't done an extension yet because we're still hoping it all transpires today. But they had to get statements, they had to get notarized statements from one of the places, you know, and he had to walk into a bank. And oh, by the way, I'm just going to tell you, this particular state was having freezing snow and rain, unequipped for it, and the banks were closed for 2 days.
What state was that? That was just recent?
Tennessee.
Tennessee was getting snow. So
Memphis,
that was
the Memphis area. And they're not equipped for it, just like we're not equipped for
no.
it.
Memphis is a southern city.
Yeah.
South of the Ohio River, Mason-Dixon line.
Yeah.
We don't get snow.
Yeah. So nobody can control that. Nobody can control the fact that you can't go in a bank that's closed because of the weather. But I think the point in us having this discussion today was, I guess, twofold. One is it ain't always easy. And different banks, different lenders, different statement dates, different rules and regs, online versus in person. Did you open a new account at the new place that you're moving to where you haven't really done any business before and they don't know you? You know, there's so many components to it that you got it. We have to be prepared for the fact that it may not happen when it's supposed to. And I hate delivering that news. I have the buyer, that seller's already in her new place, right?
You're like, what do you mean we're not closing
Yeah.
on time?
And she signed 3 days ago. So yeah, and at the end of the day, the contract is contingent upon the lending. But like your buyers, they've done all this stuff. They've paid for we did our final walkthrough with their son who lives here, and everybody wants it to happen. But up here is this control thing that we don't have control of, right? And I think we're to level 2 now, like under the underwriter. I don't even know what the jobs are, you know.
Yeah,
But
because once it finishes underwriting, then it gets forwarded to whoever is closing.
right, the
And the
processor.
closing person is the one who is responsible for communicating with the title office or the attorney to
Right,
make sure everything is balancing. Because as much as the lender may have information, they don't necessarily have the fine details on taxes to do the proration correctly. They don't have some of those final numbers based on the close date. And I think you mentioned this in episode 63, or at least you alluded to it briefly. The truth, the TRID, and the fact that we have to have 72 hours so that the buyer doesn't come through and go, oh my gosh, what happened?
right.
And it's balancing all those things. So when you push the date 3 days, that changes the prorations, which then starts the process all over again.
Right.
And if that happens to be a Friday, guess who's not working typically on a Friday or a Saturday?
This literally just happened with the other one, the trailer that I was doing with Eric Romero. I posted about it online. Another Tennessee person, by the way. So I'm not knocking Tennessee, but I just want to say it was and she had not all of the money because the last amount from the sale of her house didn't get there till Friday afternoon. So of course they didn't wire it on Friday. And they were supposed to close and she didn't know where she was going to sleep. And it got done on Monday. We had to do an extension. We got a prepossession, just so many things because she was already here. She was already here. Her niece had already flown back to Tennessee. And I'm like, I don't know. It's funny. It's not funny. It's just that it's work. And I don't know. I don't know if the average person has any idea about how much is going on behind the scenes and simultaneously how that's changing with wire fraud that exists and deed fraud that exists and the emails that we get from people. I got one this morning from somebody in Rochester, New York, who I called and didn't send it to me. So we all have to be careful, which is why the banks are being careful. However, that adds to.
There's a layer of complexity, and every single time we turn around, I just last week got yet another new credit card. And this was a new credit card because of a glitch,
Oh,
as described by Amazon,
I remember this. Yeah.
that charged our account for a Prime membership for my wife when we have a household account. And it's like, how can you have a glitch that charges me $148 when it was a free account?
Wow.
And I mean, that's the way they refer to it. It's like, oh, that was the free trial end. Like, in the meantime, it still showed as being fraud. The card was shut down. I didn't know where the charge came from.
Right.
We're still in the process of crediting and all those things. But any agent who's been in for even a couple of years is going to have a story of something that happened. And underwriters on the lending side get bitten all the time. I typically advise my buyers going, look, we're 10 days out from closing, expect some sort of crazy request. And I said, most of the time it's because it recently happened to an underwriter on their last transaction or a recent transaction, and they want to make sure the same thing doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
I had told you a past client of mine, he and his wife,
Yeah.
couple together, different last names.
Mm.
multiple houses, multiple purchases, multiple times, and their own bank said, hey, we need proof that you're married the week before closing.
Wow.
And it's like, you've got our signature cards on all of our accounts. And it wasn't just a single checking account.
Yeah. Yeah. And anyway, so I think the other side of this is that, so the buyers need to be prepared. They need to be as much advanced thinking. We as realtors need to make sure. And I had no idea. I'm going to be honest about how much was happening with how many different accounts on this one right now. And then the sellers need to be prepared too. So, I have another one under contract, and they're allowing the sellers to stay 2 weeks after they close because they have children coming to help them move. But the truth is, if theirs is sold, they do have a place to stay. They have family in town. We have friends that are here part-time that they could probably stay at their house. Now, they still have to get crap out of theirs and crap stuff like life belongings.
And
All
personal
their,
items
all
of
their,
value,
this stuff. that you
sentimental,
see.
emotional, and real dollar value that they need to take care of.
I said crap. I didn't say.
Yeah, that was our previous episode, which hasn't posted yet.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So they, they still would have to put it in some kind of a storage or a truck or whatever. So there's still costs involved, but at least it isn't a, do I have a hotel or have a roof over my head in the,
Right. And I just started with new clients yesterday.
Mhm.
And part of the discussion with them, because he actually is an employee of the Department of Homeland Security,
Okay.
doesn't know if it's related to the current activity going on in Washington.
Mhm.
But he has been advised that where he has been working remotely for several years, he is now going to be called in to work at an office. Well, guess what? That's not in this state.
So
And
where's he been living? He owns a home?
he's here, he's in San Antonio.
Wow.
And he is a cybersecurity agent for
Mhm.
Department of Homeland Security.
Right.
And if he gets called in, we're talking Pensacola, Florida, or someplace in Virginia. And it's because it's the government, and because it's not like working for the military to go, hey, you've got orders, your orders are coming in, this is where you're going to go, that sort of thing.
Yep.
It's a, hey, this is part of the discussion. It could be a couple of months before the decision is made, and then it's going to take time to implement. So he may actually have a full, he said yesterday, close to 12 months
I was going to say 6 to 12 months, maybe.
on a lease, but he still may ultimately have to break the lease. So our question and what we're searching for is someone who's willing to accept a military clause that orders can happen and change because of his position with the Department of Homeland Security.
Is that for, okay, does he own his property?
No,
or-
this is
No.
this is just for a rental.
But they know that you would need that person to know that he could have to leave. And I say it all the time when people ask about our business, that the government moves people, people die, people have babies, certain here, college kids graduate, people, there's always reasons to buy.
Life
stuff.
happens.
Yes. And some of them we're in control of, and some of them we're not. Right. So scouting wasn't Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts be prepared? Wasn't that one of your?
Yes. What
Yeah.
one of them is
Is there like an on my honor thing? I don't know.
yes, two or three fingers. Cub Scouts, I think, are two, Boy Scouts are three, because we can't salute because that's a military thing, and we are not a paramilitary organization.
And it's funny that I think more about what you guys like. I know that I don't remember what the Girl Scouts said at all. But I think between 3 brothers and 3 sons, there might have been more hearing of the Cub Scout.
So, and I know you're going to cover this in your closing, but really, I hope you're hearing what we're saying. Whether you're buying, whether you're selling, be prepared. It's just like if you were going to a hospital and you're told you need surgery. You could probably take a scalpel and cut yourself open, or you could search for somebody who's going to do it at a low cost for you. But there's a reason you work with professionals in certain industries, and you could go it alone, but it's going to be a whole lot rockier, and you will not have that person in your corner helping you navigate
Yeah,
the course.
that was really well said, brother. Thank you. Even though I'm sitting here and it's still crazy frustrating sometimes.
My significant other, lovely wife, is just like, I hate your job, because there's any number of times where things terminate and you've spent and invested hours over weeks to months,
Yeah,
and nothing happens. And guess what?
it ain't over till it's
We've
over.
done a lot of pro bono work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that one Eric and I were just talking about, the other Eric, was that we made like $2 an hour. And I told him, I said, it happened to be his dad who did the flip. I said, tell your dad he owes me like a really nice dinner or something, you know? So, all right. Are we ready to wrap this up?
I think we're ready to wrap this one up. I think our venting is over.
Yeah. We were learning people.
This was a therapy session.
Yeah, yeah. You can be my therapist. I can be yours. All right, there we go. So as we close this episode, we do want to thank everybody for joining us and listening. As we stroll down memory lane, I'm not sure that's what we did today.
Recent memories,
like in the last week. And reflect and recall things. We didn't talk a lot today about Lindsay, but you know what? We mentioned Ohio and using attorneys. So we also talked about the fact that, yeah, it is a home that we all want. People want to have a place to call home. And we do blend lifestyle with real estate. Today was a little bit on the real estate side, wasn't it? So that we can find those perfect places to live. So remember that it's our goal to communicate, educate, entertain, and connect with you. And if you're in Arizona, specifically, I'm in the Tucson area, Southern Arizona, and Eric is in Texas, in San Antonio, and the Hill Country. He does a little bit of ranching and all sorts of things that I don't do. So we are both realtors with Keller Williams, and we're here to help you find the perfect property for your family to call home. In these United States or around the world, remember that we have an extensive network. I mentioned people coming from Tennessee. That is a real estate referral through another agent. So no matter where you are, we can help you find the perfect person to assist you in your buying or selling. So remember, maybe simply, it may be simply, it may be simple, it may be simply not easy. Oh my God, it may be simple. But it ain't always easy even to finish this podcast. Until next time, I'm Donna.
And I'm Eric.
And we are
Real siblings.
Jeepers.